The day I won a BMW in a lottery, I, Laurel Pierce, suddenly received a call from myself 10 years in the future. Marshall will definitely ask to borrow your car later. Don't agree. He'll use your car to pay off gambling debts. I didn't doubt it for a second and decisively refused my brother Marshall Pierce when he asked to borrow my car. That night, he had to drive the old car to visit our parents, Arthur Pierce and Claire Pierce. On the way, the vehicle lost control, and he was severely injured on the spot, eventually ending up in a vegetative state. I blamed myself to the point of fainting. It was Arthur and Claire's constant care day and night that helped me pull through. But my future self sneered, "They're doing all this just to trick you onto the operating table and give your heart to Marshall." When I actually found the donation report in their bag, I angrily blocked them and kicked them out of the house. It wasn't until later, when I received the news of Marshall's death due to blood loss, that I realized they only wanted my blood to save his life. I immediately dialed Arthur's number, wanting to apologize, wanting to explain everything. My future self said again, "They hate you to death because of Marshall's death and want you dead. If you go, they'll just drag you into a suicide together." I stopped in my tracks, thinking I'd wait for them to calm down and talk properly again. In the end, I received the news that intruders broke into the house and killed them. I wanted to rush to see them one last time but was hit by a truck and killed. Until my death, I couldn't understand why the me from 10 years later would deliberately want to kill me. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I won the prize. "Laurel, listen to me. Marshall will definitely ask to borrow your car later, but you absolutely can't lend it to him. He just wants to use it to pay off his debt." A familiar voice rang in my ears, and I jolted suddenly, dropping my phone to the ground. "Ms. Pierce, congratulations on winning a BMW sedan." The staff member handed over the car keys with a smile. Looking at the car keys, I finally confirmed that I had been reborn to the day I first received a call from my future self. On the phone, my future self from 10 years later warned me not to agree to Marshall's request to borrow the car. At first, I didn't believe it. Seeing the identical phone number, I thought it was someone's prank. But when she revealed a secret I had never told anyone, I had to believe she was my future self from 10 years later. She swore to me that after borrowing my BMW, Marshall would immediately use it to pay off his debts. So when Marshall called to borrow the car, I firmly refused. The result was that evening, when Marshall went home to visit Arthur and Claire, he suddenly had a car accident and became a vegetative state. The subsequent report revealed that his car malfunctioned due to aging. If he had been driving a new car, the accident could have been avoided. It was because I refused to lend the car that Marshall had the accident. I cried until I passed out, blaming myself for not giving him the car, which caused his accident. It was Arthur and Claire's constant care day and night that helped me regain my strength. After my mood gradually improved, the mocking voice of my future self came through the phone again. "They're all pretending." At the time, I also thought they genuinely cared about me, so I let my guard down and drank the water with sedatives. When I woke up, I was already tied to the operating table, about to be forced to give my heart to Marshall. Following the guidance of my future self, I found the donation report in their bag. I angrily kicked Arthur and Claire out of the house, ignoring their knocking on the door all night. It wasn't until I later received the news that Marshall died from insufficient blood supply that I realized all they wanted was my blood. I was overwhelmed with guilt and wanted to apologize to Arthur and Claire and tell them the truth. At this moment, my future self called again. "This time, you must listen to me. Mom and Dad hate you to the extreme because of Marshall's death, and they don't want to live anymore. If you go now, they won't listen to anything and will only drag you into suicide with them." So, I gave up on the decision to apologize and decided to wait until they calmed down to have a proper talk with them. That night, a thief broke into my house and killed the devastated Arthur and Claire. My mind was in chaos, and I wanted to rush back to see them one last time, but I was hit by a truck and killed on the way. Before I died, my future self called again, and I heard a cold laugh coming from the phone. This time, with my rebirth, I will take control of my destiny and never repeat the tragedy of my past life. Regaining my composure, I directly ignored my future self's warning and sent Marshall a text message. "Marshall, I won a BMW in a lottery. You've always loved cars. Want to try it out for a few days?" Marshall rushed over as soon as he heard about my lottery win. He stared intently at the car I had just picked up. "Congratulations, Laurel." "Marshall, you're here? Come on, give it a try." I nudged his shoulder and shoved him into the car. Marshall sat in the driver's seat, and as soon as his hand touched the steering wheel, his eyes lit up instantly. He kept muttering, "What a car. Truly a great car." Seeing how much he loved it, I recalled the tragic car accident he had in the previous life and handed him the car keys directly. "Laurel, what are you doing?" he asked, a bit surprised. I smiled and said, "Take it and drive. You've been using that old car for over 10 years. It's time for a change." Marshall looked a bit embarrassed, but his hands kept moving on the steering wheel. He said, "This is your prize. It doesn't feel right for me to drive it." I said, "It's fine. We're family. Why be so formal? Besides, a good car should be driven by someone who knows cars, right?" He finally took the keys. "All right then." Watching him drive away in the new car, I felt a sense of relief. I had made a different choice from my previous life, so this time, things shouldn't go wrong. But before I could feel happy, I received a call from the hospital that very night. The doctor said, "Is this Ms. Pierce? Your brother just had a car accident. Please come to the hospital." Accident? I was in disbelief. How is that possible? He just got a new car today. The doctor continued, "His condition is critical right now. Please come to the hospital as soon as possible." When I arrived at the hospital, I was confused. I couldn't understand why Marshall still had an accident. I had already stopped him from driving that old car, so why did this still happen? What happened to him? I asked anxiously. Marshall's wife, Irene Foster, who arrived first, was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Hearing my voice, she lost control and rushed at me, grabbing my neck and screaming, "You jinx. If Marshall hadn't crawled up with half his life left and been found by a passerby, my child would have lost his dad right after being born. Family members, please calm down." The medical staff hurriedly separated us. A doctor explained the situation to me. Marshall drove off the cliff while on a mountain road. When the ambulance arrived, they only found a few scattered fragments. The car must have already fallen. He was covered in blood and his face was unrecognizable. We only managed to identify him through the ID card found nearby. But his car was brand new. There shouldn't have been any issues, I said, puzzled. Irene glared at me with red eyes. "You know Marshall loves his his car the most. If it weren't for you insisting he take the BMW, would this have happened? I thought, did I hurt Marshall again? How could that be? The doctor told me, maybe the feel of the new car was different from what he usually drove, and he misjudged the power while turning, which caused him to go off the cliff. I felt like I was struck by lightning on a clear day, unable to even stand steady. I thought that as long as he replaced that old car, he wouldn't have an accident. But now, because I insisted he drive the new car, it caused him to fall off the mountain. I thought, was it my stubbornness that pushed him to the edge of death again? Arthur stood aside and said, it's not your fault. You just wanted Marshall to drive a good car. Claire hugged me and comforted me. Marshall was rescued in time and is out of danger. He will definitely get better. I broke down and cried in Claire's arms. Afraid I would stay trapped in guilt, Arthur and Claire took care of me day and night, constantly checking on me. I felt their warmth, and my mood gradually improved. I suddenly remembered that it was the same in my past life, with the phone about to warn me to beware of Arthur and Claire's actions. I clearly didn't press the answer button, yet the call was automatically picked up. Laurel, I'm also very upset about Marshall's injury, but this isn't your fault. Trust me, don't drink the water Mom and Dad give you. They want to take you to the hospital to transplant your heart to Marshall.